All right, you guys. So let's pick up where I left off. And we're in the section where it's the forward, which it's him pretty much talking to the reader. The one thing that I find most difficult is to write about myself. It is hard to understand why some people thirst for knowledge about me. It was never my intention to be anyone's hero. I am certainly no great example on which to base one's life. I consider myself a very average, normal kind of guy. I have some pretty good points. I have some human feelings. I am proud of some of my achievements, and there are things that I wish I had not done. I'm not perfect, and I am not sure that I ever want to be. But it is certain that I do not belong on anyone's pedestal. I am a man with a message, and the message will be acceptable by only a few. To those few who will understand, I am your brother. Maybe we can change the future for the better. William Moore, in this disinformation publication entitled Focus, said I am a fundamentalist preacher. 20 years ago, that would have been a compliment, but today it implies sleaziness. That is why he said it. I am not and have never been any kind of preacher. I am not starting a church. I am not developing a religion. I do not belong to any organizations. I do not have any entourage. There is no cult, and I am not a cult leader. No one camps out around my house. People have called the radio talk shows claiming to have first-hand knowledge that I am a notorious radical right-wing extremist. Others have said they have proved that I belong to a white race organization. Someone said that they found my name on a list of Communist Party members. A man in Los Angeles, always the same voice, calls when I am on the radio, claiming I am an alcoholic. The truth is, most of my close friends and acquaintances consider themselves to be liberal Democrats. My only political stance is the constitutional. My wife is Chinese. That rules out the racist propaganda. I fought the communists in Vietnam. I will fight them again if necessary, but only in United States soil. I used to drink a lot of alcohol in my younger days. As I became older, the booze drizzled to a trickle. Now I do not drink much at all. Most of my friends have never seen me take a drink. Annie and I are fond of using wine in our cooking. The lies, no doubt, will continue. For the purpose of keeping everything in perspective, let's all understand that attempts to assassinate my character will continue and, in all probability, will become worse. Rather than let that get in the way, I want you to believe everything bad that you ever heard about me. See if that changes anything that I have been trying to tell you. See if it negates any of the proof. I believe that is the easiest way to handle these attacks. You who are sincerely interested in knowing will seek out me or those who are intimately close to me. Those who do are the only ones who will ever really know who and what I am. My ancestors came from England, Scotland, and Ireland. I had relatives who fought on both sides in the Civil War, and some who fought in the Indian Wars. One of my ancestors was a horse thief in Texas. I don't know for sure, but I think he got hanged for it. So let me just stop it there. It's clear that he is talking about himself. He's pretty much becoming an open book at this point, and he's telling you his history. He's telling you the bad characteristic that they have towards him because of what he is trying to tell the people and wake them up to tyrannism, wake them up to a world that's becoming globalized. And this, again, was written in 1991, when this was literally considered conspiracy. This was literally considered a crazy person that just went wacko and started just talking about nonsense with some truth or not. This is during that time where people like him were not being paid attention. And he's telling you how they're trying to characterize him as an alcoholic, racist, communist. Pretty much what we're seeing in today's day. What do they call anybody that's conservative? Anybody that supports Donald Trump's policy or that is a hardcore believer of God and Christian values? They call you Nazi. They call you racist. They call you homophobe. They're calling you all these names, and he's describing exactly what was happening to him at that time. I don't see any difference. It just has accelerated more, and now it's only for one person. But what we're seeing now is attacking a whole party. So, in a sense of not only verbally attacking conservatives, Republicans, Christian believers, but they're also starting to assault people. So it's a trip to me reading this and just kind of looking at present time of how things are starting to turn out, which is pretty crazy. All right. So I just wanted to stop by, kind of put that into my own notes, just thoughts that I have in my head while I'm reading this. So let's go on. When I was a little boy, I heard whispers that there was some Cherokee blood in the family. Every time I asked about it, I was told to shut up. I never could figure out why everyone was afraid to talk about the Indian blood. I thought and still think that it is something of which to be proud. I have since discovered that the old folks in my family, like the old folks in almost every family, thought there was some stigma attached to being part Indian. In the old days, on the American frontier, people lived by hard rules. If you weren't accepted by your neighbors, you were more than likely to end up dead. My paternal grandmother's family, named Vance, traveled to Texas in a covered wagon and were some of the first settlers in the area Odessa. My great grandfather Vance was a real cowboy who eventually became one of the first oil field workers. My great grandmother Vance told me that one of the first homes was a dugout on the prairie. My great aunt's sister owned a photo of her father, my great grandmother Vance, standing in front of a saloon beside his friend. Both men had 6 guns stuck in their belts. When she was about 84, so she told me that my great grandfather Vance had gone off to do some work for a rancher. It was during a particular nasty Indian uprising. My great grandmother was a newly married young woman at the time. She rose early one morning and saw smoke rising from the direction of one of her neighbors. Soon a war party of 5 young braves rode up to her dugout. She told me that she was scared to death, but knew if she showed it, they would kill her for sure. The Indians were hungry. Great grandmother Vance made them get down off their ponies, dragged them inside, and fed them. They didn't harm her. After filling their stomachs, they rode off in the direction where she saw smoke rising later that afternoon. She said that she learned later that she was the only one in the area that had not been burned out or killed. She was a very brave woman. Great grandma Vance died in a car accident just a short time after telling me that story. I thought it was a very strange way for her to die. She went from covered wagons to Fords and Boeing 707s. Grandma Vance saw just about everything ever was important in this world happened in her lifetime. Imagine that. I'm going to stop it right here just a little bit, just to acknowledge that. So his great grandmother not only experienced the wagon and the Boeing 707s, so this great grandmother experienced evolution in how people travel in one lifetime. I don't know. I thought that was pretty amazing. That shows you how many years she was alive and was able to experience all those things, which some people don't get to experience that much, let alone how things became more advanced and how to travel. I'm going to carry on. My paternal grandfather's family also rode across the country in a covered wagon. They strayed a little north, however, and ended up in the Indian Territory now known as Oklahoma. They were on the front line during the Oklahoma land rush and succeeded in staking out 320 acres of Big Bear Creek near what would eventually become a need. A little town sprung up not too far away called Garber. They raised a lot of kids. I remember my great grandmother cooking the biggest breakfast I have ever seen. We slept in a real feather beds that swallowed us up. We ran to the outhouse in the middle of the night because we were embarrassed to use the chamber pot that great grandmother kept handy under every bed. In the morning, everyone would crowd around the wood stove in the kitchen or the coal stove in the parlor trying to get warm. My dad had given me a 22 rifle for Christmas, and great grandma's farm was the first place that I ever went hunting. I got up before the sun one morning, tippy-toed downstairs, and headed out for the creek. About 2 hours later, I saw my chance and shot a quail sitting up in a tree. I strutted proudly to the farmhouse, holding the quail up for all to see. Luckily, the farm hand saw me first. He burst out laughing and asked me what I thought I was doing with that sparrow. I ran off and buried that bird and never said a word to anyone. I learned later that quails don't sit in trees. For those who may think this is to be a terrible thing, I must tell you that every boy in those days was given a rifle and taught to hunt. During hunting season, many a family managed to put aside some extra money because the boys brought home meat from the hunt. That money saved was sorely needed. It was considered a duty for a citizen to own a gun in order to carry out the intent of the Second Amendment to the Constitution. As long as the citizen owned guns, the government could not become oppressive. That is somewhere to stop because it is very important that of what he's saying here. The Second Amendment to the Constitution. As long as the citizens own guns, the government could never become oppressive. And what are we seeing now? And what have we been seeing for the last couple of years? Where gun laws have been more restrictive towards citizens. And one thing that people just do not understand is the fact that more gun control does not mean less gun violence. Criminals are not going to care whatsoever any law that's preventing them from getting a gun because they're criminals. So, regardless of the fact is, the only ones that are going to suffer, the only ones that are going to be victimized are the ones that do not have a gun. The government is also willing to take citizens' guns rights. And every time there's a mass shooting, what do politicians talk about? Mostly what the Democrats talk about is the fact that there needs to be more gun control. And that is not the way to focus an incident like that. It is horrible when we see mass shootings. It is horrible when there's mass casualties. It is very horrible if even one life is lost because of gun violence. But more gun control does not mean that we'll fix the gun violence. The criminals are always going to get the guns because that's what they do. They victimize people. They don't follow the rules. They don't follow the law. But I think that was pretty good what he said, and something that we should all keep in mind. We should never ever be able to get our guns rights taken away. My mother's family came from Scotland and settled in North Carolina. They were hardworking and thrifty folk. Most of them were poor. I never knew much more about my mother's family. I don't even remember anyone talking much about them. I know that my grandmother, Nellie Woodside, was forced to give up some of her children when her husband died. There was not enough money to feed all of the kids. My mother was one of those chosen to live in a children's home until things got better. No one ever talked about my mother's father. When I asked about my grandfather, I was told Red was no good and you just mind your own business. I got the feeling that nobody liked him. He died before I entered this world. I was born May 6, 1943. I was reared in the military family. My father is a USAF Lieutenant Colonel Milton V. Cooper. He preferred to be called Jack, the nickname given to him by the family when he was a boy. Dad began his Air Force career as a young cadet flying biplanes and retired as a command pilot with 1,000 hours to his credit. I have a picture of him standing in front of an old biplane in his leather jacket, his cap with the ear flaps just like Snoopy wears. So this section of the book is his background. He's talking to you a little bit about where he's come from, who his grandparents are, where the grandparents came from, story about his grandma, how she was literally faced with could have possibly been her last day when the Indians were raiding the area. I mean, what she ended up just doing was suppress the fear, offer them food. They were appreciative, and she was the only survivor that was left there. They left her alone after her kindness of feeding them. So it's a pretty cool section, how he ends up just kind of giving you details of his life. You can look him up on the internet, Wikipedia. Obviously, nothing good is going to be said about him. Pretty much a whack job. But I think in today's date, it's something we got to go back and take a second look because as we're seeing now, we're starting to see a lot of the things that conspiracy theories talked about, and they kept telling the people what's going to be happening, what is the government up to, so on and so forth. And everybody, such as the corporate media and everybody else, chimed in and said, no, these people are just crazy people. He's an alcoholic. He's racist. He's a communist. He's crazy. What they do, they attack the person's character. They do everything and anything to defame this person's name. We're seeing it in real time when they ended up doing it. I'm just using it as an example, how they did it to Donald Trump, how they trumped up these charges, how they allege that he did this and that, he colluded with Russia and so on and so forth, and everything's starting to crumble. The lies are being exposed. So we are understanding when he talks about that they're trying to assassinate his character, we know what that looks like because we have an example, just recently, an example of a president that was not only doing the impossible to assassinate his character, but they were trying to trump up as many charges so he can rot in prison. But I'm going to leave it here. And I believe the next section of this will also be about his family, mother and father. And again, I'm going to read this book. I'm going to go through it, put my comments here and there, what I'm thinking while I'm reading it, give some examples that I kind of see that relates to what he might be talking about. But this book is very interesting. I have read this before. I only remember bits and pieces of it, but I just want to take another look at this book and see if there's anything else he has been talking about that we can relate it to today's date, past couple of months, past couple of years. So just stick around, be patient. I know my reading is not as well as I would like it to be, but this is whole learning process for me. And it should be a learning process for you as well. As that's why I want to put in my own opinions, because I want to hear from you guys too and see what you guys have to say as I'm reading this. Anything that might pop up to you and say, you know what, this is another example of what you're talking about to this day, or that and this, whatever the case is. But I'm going to end it here and I will pick it up next time.